Okay, the next actor I'd like to show you is the envelope generator. Now this is a very powerful actor which I tend to use a lot, and I think at times it can be a little bit misunderstood. So what is it? Well, by default it just looks like this, and what this means is there's one segment, which is this one line. It starts, so this little point here is 0, and in 1 second it's going to travel up this line and hit 100, and the output is shown here. So if I just trigger that, you'll see what it does. That's it. Let's change this to 15 seconds, and now it'll take 15 seconds to go from here to the end. And as it hits 100 and this yellow line hits the end of this box, which is a visual representation of the data here, you'll see that it gives you a trigger just to let you know I've completed my task. There you go. But if we add 2 segments in, now you'll see I get a few more bits of information, and this box is extended a little bit. So if I change this to 5 and this to 5, you'll see I get a perfect triangle. So this means it's going to go from 0 to 100 over 5 seconds, then 100 to 5. Sorry, 100 to 0 over 5 seconds. So let's trigger that while we see that happen. So this could be fading a projector in, it could be adding an effect, and then it could be going out again, and then it says trigger. Now that's great, but what about this trigger mode? Currently it's set on all, so I could create 100 segments and they will all play in a line in a linear fashion from beginning to end. But what if you wanted it to stop when it got to this top value and then do the next one when you tell it to, when you trigger it here? So let's change it to from all to 1 end. Trigger it again, and you'll see now it goes from value 1 and it goes to there, and it stops and it holds. It doesn't go back to the beginning and it doesn't jump to the end. I have to now trigger it again, and you've probably guessed it, it's going to go from 100 to 0 over 5 seconds. So think of that mode as like a holding state. Okay, there is another mode which is 1 individual. So this will kind of do the same thing, but it will go there and go back again. However, this relates to the trigger. So what this will do is the end trigger will only trigger at the end of each one. So let me show you that again. So look at end trigger, it will trigger when it gets to this point there, and let me just reset it to 1 end. I'm just going to jump out the scene and go back in. So because I've changed that to 1 and end, the trigger will only happen once it's gone to this point. So let me show you that. It sounds a bit confusing, but you'll see it now. So we don't get a trigger, but we will get a trigger when it goes to the end here. So it depends if you need this end trigger or not. This is really useful when you want things to happen at set periods of time, or when this trigger happens, you need to time things not to happen for 5 seconds, 10 seconds. This is how I tend to use it. I tend to do things like have a flat line and to fade things in. So for example, something could be triggered and I want it to do nothing. So over 5 seconds, I'm going 0, 0, and then I can trigger it again. I want something to happen. It's hard to give you a scenario where you want to use this, but it is quite useful for certain situations. It's good for interactive installations when you know you want something to happen, when it needs to have a 5, 6, 7 second delay, maybe more. But anyway, this is a generator actor called the envelope generator, which is very, very useful and gets me certainly out of lots of tricky situations.